things change, my friend. And so we're going to think about how to think about thinking when things change. So follow me on the path. And we're going to go through the 8 vicissitudes. They're the 8 changeable things. There's actually 4 of them, but they're opposites of each other. And this is the way we try to approach life as it inevitably changes. So stay with me. Hey guys, this is Raymond Sean over the Centered Path, and today we're going to go over the 8 vicissitudes, the 8 changeable aspects of life. And this is the real, when meditation practice of insight, actually the rubber kind of hits the road. And so there's a few things that happen. When good things happen and when bad things happen, we tend to react to them, right? I mean, if it's a good thing, we should be happy, and if it's a sad thing, we should be sad. These are actually normal human emotions. And monks too have emotions, and when I've worked with them, you know, they do express those emotions because they come up, but what happens is they see them in this way, and they see them as these changeable events, that this sadness, this terrible thing, this tragedy, whatever it is, won't last. And the same thing, when something good happens, something happy happens, something very fortunate happens, they also realize that this is something that will change. And so don't get too crazy about, too excited about it, because it will change. Not to be like pessimistic, you know, thinking that, oh, everything's going to change, everything's going to fall apart anyway, which, I mean, it is, but the idea is to understand the way things are. When things are bad, they're not going to stay that way. When they're good, they're not going to stay with you, so you better enjoy them while they're here. Okay, so this is kind of the thing that we start to do with this. When we're seeing as this arises in our minds, whatever it is, our feelings, our emotions, our mental formations, our thoughts, our consciousness, when that arises, it's inconstant. It's not a constant thing. It changes. And that's what vicissitude means. It means it's changeable. Okay? And there's 4 points that we're really going to do. It was 4 things that bounce back and forth with each other. It's going to be something that's pleasurable and something that's painful or non-pleasurable, we could say. We're also looking at things that are like, you may gain or you may lose something. So say you gain a bunch of money, you may lose a bunch of money. So these are things we should see them as they are and be able to approach them. Other one is praise and blame. So sometimes you do really well. My grandmother used to have a thing on the wall that says, when I do well, I hear it never, and when I do well, or when I do bad, I hear it ever. I mean, it was one of those things that she had in the kitchen, and it was a jokingly kind of thing about, you know, the way things are, but that's the way it is. So I mean, you just got to kind of laugh and let it go. The other one is fame and disrepute. You know, sometimes you're famous and everybody loves you, and sometimes people hate you. It depends on where you are. And if you start to understand that, you don't have to worry as much about the way things are, you know, the way life is. Okay, you can let the water roll off you like the water off a duck's back, basically. There's a good story that Alan Watts actually explains, and he talks about a man who had a small farm in the ancient times, you know, whatever, and one night his horse got away, and his horse left, and his neighbor showed up the next day and said, oh my gosh, that's terrible, you're never going to be able to bring your stuff to market, and you're not going to be able to travel very well when the winter comes, and this is a terrible thing. How are you going to do this? He says, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. And so they said, oh, that's kind of I'd be much more upset than that. And they took off, and he was hung around and, you know, well, went about his work. You know, what could he do? Look for the horse as well as he could, but he didn't find it, so he came back, and, you know, it's like, okay, got to get other work done. The next day, or a few days later, the horse returned, but it brought with it 3 other horses. And so neighbors showed up again, and they said, my gosh, how fortunate of you. It's amazing. Your horse brought back 4 horses, 3 other horses that you can train and you can sell or you can use, and you're now a very rich man. So maybe it is and maybe it isn't. A few days later, his son, his only son, was working with the horses and was trying to break them and train them so that they'd be rideable. And he fell and broke his leg. And the neighbors came by to help tend with him, and they said, that's so unfortunate and so terrible that your son fell off and broke his leg. And he said, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. And then a few days later, the army showed up to conscript, which means to forcibly bring you into the army. It says we're starting a new campaign. We need the first son or the sons of every family in the area. And they saw that the son had a broken leg. And they said, well, we can't take him. He's useless. He's not going to be good for this war. And so his family came by, the neighbors came by and said how amazing and how wonderful it is and how fortunate you have been that your son wasn't chosen to go in the army so that he wouldn't be injured and he wouldn't be killed. And the man said, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So this is kind of that detachment, right? We're not attached to the outcome. We're not attached to the way it is. And it's also to be able to kind of like step back and see processes as they're going on, because we want to be able to not be so upset when things go wrong and not be so happy when things go right, I guess. I mean, there's this kind of like, it's not a melancholy and it's not a stoic kind of thing. It's a very realistic kind of thing. And what we're trying to do is see things as they are. Okay, and that's what Stoicism is, and that's what Buddhism really is trying to explain to people. And to get you to do is to see it for what it is. Of course you're sad when something happens that is sad. And you realize that sadness and you experience that sadness and you go through that sadness. But that's also an object of meditation. That's an object of your own contemplation. When we contemplate these things, we actually get a deeper feeling for them, and we start to see them really as they are, and we can explore them. And that's what the whole idea of being human and having this mind and this heart and this way of thinking is. And with meditation and with Buddhism itself, it's about being human. It's very humanistic. It's be as human as you can, right? And it's not to deny feelings of sadness or feelings of elation or feelings of happiness. When you're happy, laugh and be happy. When you're sad, cry and be sad. It's okay. Now, if we get too attached to it or we're too stuck in that, that's where we can end up with problems, because if it's something good that's happening too much, we can get attached to the way that feels and try harder to get to the next step of that, and that can cause problems. Obviously, we see this in movie stars, we see this in people who use drugs, we see people who use alcohol. They want that next high, that next feeling, and this is something that we try to work on beforehand to make sure that we feel even. We understand, like, okay, this was a nice time, a good tasting time, or whatever it was, a good meal, a good drink, and these things, but we're not going to be attached to them so that we have to have them in the future. Or we don't think that, perhaps later on, if something terrible happens, this is my life, this is my karma's so bad, and That's not true. And so we can't think that way, because if we start thinking that way, our brains and our minds will start looking for ways to prove that to us. This is kind of a different take on this, but that's really the gist of the practice. Now, we have to realize that life is muddy and life is gruesome. And that's just kind of the way things are. Life is also beautiful. And think of the lotus. The lotus is the perfect example of this, because the lotus grows in nasty, gross, mucky, cruddy water. But it grows from that and grows out and becomes beautiful and pure outside of that. The mud does not stick to the lotus. The terribleness does not stick to the lotus. The lotus is a beautiful thing in the most putrid of environments, and that's the beauty of this as a flower. And that's why that lotus flower is used as a I thought there was one, usually there's one like in his lap, but that's an object of meditation all in and of itself. Okay, one, because the flower is something that's beautiful and temporary, right? And also the mud is something that is also brings forth something that's beautiful. So this is Reverend Sean over at the Center Path. Don't forget to go online and look at the centerpath.org and download your cheat sheet. There's a 2-page cheat sheet on there which will give you all the basic concepts in Buddhism that we can go over. And then there's also in there a single sheet I've tried to write up and kind of like get this idea down on paper for these videos, and you can follow along, or you can use them for your own notes and to start to really get into your own practice. And this is all about your own practice anyway. I'm not trying to teach you how to practice. we're doing this together. So as we work together on this, we can actually see these things, the pleasure and the pain. We can pick them and isolate them for a meditation, for example. You can pick something that happened that was very wonderful, that you were really excited about, and how it also didn't last. Now, don't get upset that it didn't last, because everything's going to fall apart anyway, and you'd be all depressed and pessimistic. That's not the idea of this. The idea is to see it realistically. When something goes good, enjoy it. When something goes bad, make sure you understand it. Make sure you understand the good things, make sure you understand the bad things. When you understand them, when you understand that they are impermanent, that they're ever-changing, that you'll enjoy more the good things in life, and you'll understand that the bad things in life also pass. This is Reverend Sean. You guys take care.